Hi.
Things seemed fine with Kelsey at first. We'd been together for 5 years, married for 3. Sure, no relationship is perfect, but we had our good moments. Then, I started noticing little things. She'd come home late more often and always had an excuse. Work stuff. But there was a change in her voice, like she was trying to convince herself more than me. She started going out with coworkers more, and sometimes, she'd come home smelling like perfume I didn't recognize. I tried to brush it off. Maybe one of her coworkers had a new scent. But over time, I felt like I was living with a stranger. She became distant, not in a bad way, but like I wasn't really there. I began to think it might be Jason, her boss. They spent a lot of time together at work, and I'd see them laughing, sharing private jokes at company events. It didn't sit right with me, but I told myself I was being insecure. Then, at the company gala, I saw them standing together, laughing, her hand on his arm. And the way she looked at him, it wasn't just friendly. It felt like something more. That was when it hit me. I wasn't being paranoid. Something was going on. I tried to keep calm, but I couldn't shake the feeling. I took her out on date nights, tried to show her I cared, but nothing worked. Days went by, and my suspicions grew. Then I found the texts. It wasn't business. It wasn't work-related. It was personal, flirty inside jokes and messages that made my stomach drop. I knew deep down this wasn't just a work friendship. I couldn't pretend anymore. I was staring at proof of my wife's betrayal. Now, I had to figure out what to do. Confront her? Walk away? I didn't know that I couldn't just sit with that feeling anymore. The texts, the way she looked at him. I had to confront her. But the thought of it made my stomach twist. How do you confront your wife about something like this without looking like a crazy, jealous husband? It didn't feel right, but I knew I had to. I waited until that night, when she came home late, as usual. She was all smiles, telling me about her great time with Jason and the team. That's when I couldn't hold back anymore. I just said it. Are you sleeping with him? Her face went white. She stammered, eyes darting around the room, and tried to deny it. No, of course not. Where's this coming from? But I could see it in her eyes. She was lying. The silence that followed was worse than any answer I could have gotten. I showed her the texts, and her whole demeanor shifted. She went cold, trying to act surprised, like she didn't know how they got there. But I wasn't buying it. Kelsey, this isn't just innocent. Don't lie to me. She cried, begged me to understand. She said it wasn't what I thought, that Jason was just a friend. But the excuses weren't adding up anymore. She was defensive, bitchy even, blaming me for overreacting and not trusting her. The more she denied it, the more I realized how deep this had gone, and how far she was willing to lie to keep it hidden. I couldn't take it anymore. I asked her flat out, "Do you love him?" She paused, and that silence screamed louder than anything. "No," she said, but there was no conviction in her voice. It was the kind of answer you give when you're already planning your escape, when you're too far gone to care anymore. I stood there, feeling the weight of everything crashing down. She hadn't just betrayed my trust. She had been lying to my face for who knows how long. I didn't know what to do next, but I knew I couldn't pretend it was okay anymore. After the confrontation, things went downhill fast. The house felt empty, even though we were both still there. Kelsey tried to apologize, but I couldn't even look at her without seeing Jason's face in my mind. Every time she touched me, I flinched. The warmth I once felt when she came near me was gone. She kept trying to explain herself, but it all sounded like the same tired excuses. It was just work. It didn't mean anything. You're overreacting. But none of it made sense anymore. The trust was shattered, and no amount of talking was going to fix that. I started distancing myself. I stopped asking about her day. Stopped trying to show I cared. What was the point? She had already made her choice. The more she tried to make things right, the more I just wanted space. She kept coming at me with her usual manipulations. "I'm sorry, please forgive me," she'd say, then turn around and accuse me of being too cold, of not giving her a chance to make it up. But the truth was, I was done. The hardest part was seeing how little she seemed to care about what she had done to us. She'd apologize one minute, then complain about how I was treating her like a criminal. It was like I wasn't even allowed to feel hurt anymore. It felt like she was more focused on her own guilt than the damage she'd caused to me, to us. I started thinking more and more about Jason. Was he just a coworker, or was there more to it? It didn't matter anymore. Kelsey had already made it clear where her loyalties lay. The betrayal wasn't just in the affair. It was in the lies, the deceit, the way she thought I wouldn't figure it out. I was still angry, but more than that, I was humiliated. The man I trusted had been the one sneaking around behind my back, and the woman I loved had chosen him. I wasn't sure if I could ever look at her the same way again. The more I thought about it, the more I realized I was done. There was no coming back from this. The pain was too much, and the trust was gone. I didn't know what the future held, but I knew this marriage was over. I couldn't stay in this limbo anymore. It was time to decide what came next. But I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't going to let her drag me down any further. It took a few days for everything to sink in, but I finally made up my mind. I wasn't going to keep living this lie. Kelsey tried to play the victim, but I wasn't buying it anymore. Every time she said, "I'm sorry," or "I didn't mean to hurt you," I just felt more disgusted. She wasn't sorry. She was sorry that she got caught. I had been trying to fix things for so long, doing everything I could to keep the peace, to make things work. But she had already checked out long before I even had a clue. She was still hanging on to whatever she had with Jason, and I was just a guy she had to pretend to love, to keep up appearances. It was painful, though. I mean, the idea of walking away wasn't easy. We'd been through so much together. But what were we even holding on to? The woman I married wasn't the woman who was sitting in front of me, crying and begging for forgiveness. She was a stranger. I told her I needed space. I couldn't look at her without seeing Jason's face, and I didn't know how to live with that. I told her I was done, that I needed to leave. There was no big argument, no dramatic fight. She tried to fight for it, tried to say she'd fix things, that she'd do whatever it took. But I couldn't do it anymore. I packed up my things, quietly, methodically. I didn't want to make a scene. I just wanted out. As I walked out the door, I didn't look back. I knew if I did, I'd second-guess myself, and I couldn't do that. Not anymore. The hardest part wasn't leaving. It was knowing I had been so blind. I'd been too trusting, too willing to believe that everything was fine. I kept telling myself that love was enough, that if we just worked hard enough, everything would fall into place. But sometimes love isn't enough. And now, here I was, broken, humiliated, but finally free. It was over. It hurt, but I couldn't let it destroy me. I had to move forward. I had to heal. But I had no idea how long that would take. The first few days after I left were empty. It's weird, because you expect to feel relief after making a tough decision, but all I felt was a huge void. I kept staring at my phone, waiting for Kelsey to reach out, but she didn't. Not once. I thought maybe she'd try to beg me back, or at least send a message saying she was sorry. But the silence was deafening. I tried to keep myself busy, working, seeing friends, going to the gym, but nothing felt right. Everything I did reminded me of her. Our favorite restaurants, places we used to go on weekends, even the stupid TV shows we used to watch together. I felt like I was drowning in memories of someone who wasn't even the person I thought she was. I didn't reach out to her either. Part of me wanted to know what she was thinking, if she regretted anything. But I couldn't. Every time I even considered it, the anger would bubble up. How could she just move on so easily? How could she betray me like that, and then act like nothing had happened? I thought I'd be angry all the time. And don't get me wrong, there were definitely moments where I was furious. I'd sit in my car, gripping the wheel, wondering how the hell I didn't see it sooner. But a bigger part of me was just sad. Not for her, definitely not for her, but for what we lost. For how easy it had been for her to throw everything away. I started to feel a shift in myself, though. Maybe it was the distance, or maybe it was just a passage of time. But I wasn't consumed by anger anymore. I was hurt, yes, but I also realized that I deserved more than that. I deserved someone who wasn't going to look at me like I was the second choice. I deserved someone who would be there, fully, not just when it was convenient. So, I began to move forward. Slowly but surely. The hardest part was admitting to myself that I wasn't going to get the closure I wanted. I wasn't going to get the apology I felt I deserved. She might never feel the weight of what she did, and that's something I had to accept. But I didn't need her to feel it for me to heal. I had to find my own peace, my own closure. And that's what I began to focus on. Taking care of myself, building something for me. Not for the we. That didn't exist anymore. I was starting over, one step at a time. And even though it hurt like hell, I knew it was the right thing to do. It had been a couple of weeks since I left, and I thought I was doing okay. I was learning to live with the pain, to accept that this chapter was over. I had good days and bad days, but the bad ones were starting to feel more manageable. I was making progress, or at least, that's what I kept telling myself. Then one night my phone rang. It was her. Kelsey. I didn't even have to look at the screen to know it was her. I knew that number too well. My heart raced as I debated whether or not to pick up. I had gotten so used to the silence, so used to being free from the constant pain of her betrayal. But there was a part of me, just a small part, that still hoped maybe this call would be different. Maybe she'd finally get it. I hesitated for a few seconds, then answered. Hello. Her voice was shaky, almost fragile. Hey, it's me. I know you probably don't want to talk to me, but I need to explain something. I felt a lump in my throat, but I didn't speak. I just let her talk. I've been thinking a lot, she continued. I know I messed up. I know I hurt you, and I'll never forgive myself for that. But Jason was just there. He was there when I felt lost, when I felt like you didn't need me anymore. I made a mistake. I thought I could fix things on my own, but I was wrong. I ruined everything. She sounded so broken, so remorseful, but something inside me snapped. The woman on the other end of the line wasn't the same woman I'd been married to. She was someone else, trying to manipulate me again, using guilt to pull me back in. And I wasn't going to fall for it. Don't. I cut her off. Don't do this. Don't make me feel sorry for you. You made your choice, Kelsey. And it wasn't me. There was a long pause, and for a second, I almost thought she wasn't going to respond. But she did. I love you, she said, almost a whisper. I didn't know if it was the desperation in her voice or the way she said it. But for a second, I felt something. I almost believed her. But then I remembered everything, every lie, every moment of doubt, every time she chose Jason over me. You love me, I said, my voice tight. But not enough. Not enough to be honest, not enough to fight for us. I'm done. I can't keep doing this with you. She tried to say something else, but I hung up before she could finish. I sat there in the silence, my phone in my hand, feeling the weight of everything. The call was like a final punch to the gut, but it also gave me clarity. She wasn't the woman I thought she was. She was someone who made a choice, and now I had to live with it. There would be no reconciliation. No, let's work this out. It was over, and for the first time in weeks, I felt at peace. The days that followed were quieter, less chaotic. After the call, I didn't feel angry, but I didn't feel relieved either. I felt something different. I didn't know how to describe it, but it was like I'd taken a deep breath after holding it for way too long. There was still pain, sure, but now there was space for me to heal. I spent a lot of time alone, not in some sad, overdramatic way, but in a way where I could finally hear myself think. I started getting back to things I used to enjoy before all this mess. Hanging out with friends, hitting the gym, reading books I hadn't touched in months. I rediscovered parts of myself that I'd put aside for the relationship. I wasn't just us anymore. I was me again. I won't lie. There were moments when I missed the idea of her. The way we used to laugh, the little inside jokes, the way she would always say, I love you before bed. Those memories still stung, but they didn't have the same hold on me. I was learning to let go. It was like peeling off the layers of someone else's life, one piece at a time, until I could finally see the real me again. Then one evening, I ran into Jason. I didn't expect it. I was just out for a walk, trying to clear my head, when I saw him walking toward me. It was like one of those moments where everything slows down. My heart skipped a beat, and I almost turned around, but I forced myself to stay. I wasn't running anymore. He looked just as shocked to see me as I was to see him. He didn't say anything at first, just stood there, awkwardly shifting from foot to foot. I could tell he wasn't expecting a confrontation. "Hey," he said, his voice unsure. "I didn't think I'd run into you. How have you been?" I stared at him for a moment, weighing my options. I could have told him off, punched him, or maybe just walked away. But I didn't want to do that. I'd already made my peace with him by letting him go out of my life. "I've been fine," I said flatly. "Better than you, I imagine." His eyes dropped to the ground. He didn't try to argue, didn't make any excuses. For a second, I almost felt bad for him. But then I remembered how everything had gone down. He wasn't the victim here. He was part of the mess. "You don't owe me anything," I added. "Just stay away from me and Kelsey." He nodded, almost relieved that I wasn't going to escalate things. "I get it, man. I really do. I'm sorry for everything." I didn't respond. There was nothing more to say. I wasn't looking for an apology anymore. I wasn't looking for anything from him. I closed that door. After he walked away, I just stood there for a few moments, letting the weight of everything wash over me. But this time, it didn't hurt. It just was. And that was enough. I realized that I wasn't angry anymore. Not at him. Not at Kelsey. They'd done what they'd done, but I was done letting it define me. I was moving on. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I was finally freed. It's strange how the world keeps spinning, even when your life feels like it's completely shattered. After everything with Kelsey and Jason, I had to rebuild both myself and my life. It wasn't as simple as just walking away, though. There was still a lot of anger, a lot of confusion, and honestly, a lot of sadness. But little by little, I started putting the pieces back together. I began with the basics. I started getting more serious about my work, diving into projects that I had pushed aside while focusing on Kelsey and the mess that had consumed my life. It felt good to throw myself into something again. I'd forgotten what it was like to feel like me. Not someone's partner, not a guy with a broken heart, but just someone who had something to prove to himself. I also reached out to friends I hadn't seen in a while, people who had been there for me before everything went south. I didn't feel like I owed anyone an explanation, but I wanted to reconnect. I needed the support, even if I was too proud to admit it. The guys were all too eager to spend time with me, especially once I started opening up about what had happened. They didn't judge me, they just listened. And then there were the small victories, the days when I'd go through a whole afternoon without thinking about Kelsey or Jason, when I'd feel normal again. I still had moments where I missed her, or at least the idea of her, the companionship, the plans, the dreams we had together. But those moments were fewer, and eventually, they were almost non-existent. What I didn't expect was to meet someone else. It wasn't anything serious, not at first. Just a few casual dates with a woman named Sarah, who I met through mutual friends. She wasn't looking for anything heavy, and neither was I. We talked, we laughed, and for the first time in months, I felt a spark. It wasn't about replacing Kelsey. It was about rediscovering the simple joy of being with someone who didn't have baggage attached. But it wasn't just about her. It was about me, about getting to a point where I could let someone else in without feeling like I was betraying myself. It was like getting a glimpse of what happiness could look like again, even if it was small. The thing is, you never really expect to heal completely after something like this. You don't wake up one day and just feel better. It's more like a slow burn, a gradual shift. I started to realize that I didn't need Kelsey or Jason to validate my worth. I didn't need them to be happy. It was hard to accept that at first, but it was true. I was enough. I had always been enough. As for Kelsey, I heard through the grapevine that she was seeing someone new. At first, it stung a little, but that was all. I didn't care. I was too busy living my life, figuring out who I was without her. I didn't want her back. I just wanted to be free. And that's what I finally had. Freedom. Freedom from the pain, from the lies, from the suffocating grip of what could have been. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't broken. I was starting fresh, and that was all I needed. Life wasn't perfect. It never would be. But for the first time in a long time, I was starting to believe that it could be good again. A few months had passed since everything fell apart, and the quiet became a welcome friend. I wasn't constantly on edge anymore, always expecting a phone call or a message from Kelsey, or worrying about what Jason might be up to. The days still had their challenges, of course. There were moments when the weight of everything would hit me, Moments where I'd remember how badly I'd been betrayed. But they were fewer now. It was like I'd finally built up a wall around the worst parts of the pain. And every day that passed, I added another brick to it. There were times when I'd catch myself smiling for no reason, remembering something small but good. Like how I used to make stupid jokes to make Kelsey laugh. Or how we'd go on late-night drives to nowhere, just because. But it wasn't sad anymore. It was just a memory, something that I could look back on and appreciate without it defining me. I wasn't letting the past control my present anymore. I got a lot better at being alone. Not lonely, just alone. There's a difference. I started enjoying my own company again, the silence, the freedom. I spent weekends hiking, biking, or even just sitting in a coffee shop with a book. Things that, for so long, I put aside to prioritize someone else. It felt like I was finally rediscovering who I was before Kelsey, before all the mess. Sarah and I continued seeing each other, but we kept it light. I wasn't rushing anything. I wasn't looking for some grand love story, but I enjoyed the companionship. She didn't expect anything from me. She wasn't trying to fix me, and I wasn't trying to rush into anything. We were just two people who found comfort in each other's company. And honestly, it felt good to just be. Then, out of nowhere, Kelsey reached out again. It wasn't anything dramatic. No long messages begging for another chance. No manipulative apologies. It was a simple text. Can we talk? I need to explain something. I stared at the message for a long time, unsure of what to do. Part of me wanted to ignore it. After everything, why even bother? But another part of me knew that this was something I needed to do for myself, so I could move forward completely. I'd spent so much time trying to figure out what went wrong, and maybe, just maybe, this would give me the closure I never got. I agreed to meet. We sat in a small park, in the same spot where we used to go when we first started dating. It felt surreal, sitting across from her again, this time without the comfort of familiarity. I owe you an explanation, Kelsey said, her voice quiet, uncertain. I've been doing a lot of thinking, and I know this doesn't make up for anything, but I need you to understand that what I did was because of my own insecurities. I wasn't trying to hurt you, but I did, and I can't take that back. I just listened. Part of me wanted to scream at her, remind her of the lies, the betrayal, everything that shattered me. But the bigger part of me knew that wasn't what I needed. I didn't need her apology. I needed to hear her acknowledge what happened, but I didn't need to hold onto the anger anymore. I don't expect you to forgive me, she continued, but I am sorry. I really am. For the first time, I didn't feel that old ache. It was like hearing her say those words, finally let me close the chapter for good. I didn't have to keep holding on to the bitterness or the resentment. I could walk away from this, finally, truly walk away, without the weight of it all pulling me down. I appreciate you saying that, I said, my voice steady. But I've already moved on, Kelsey. I don't need you to fix anything. It's over, and I'm okay with that. She nodded, and for the first time, I saw something in her eyes that wasn't guilt, it was acceptance. She didn't push for more, didn't try to convince me otherwise. We sat in silence for a while, just two people who once loved each other, now strangers, finally at peace. When I left, I felt light. Not relieved, not victorious, just light. The past didn't define me anymore. I was free from it. That's when I knew for sure I'd found peace. It wasn't about finding someone new or getting back to the old me. It was about accepting everything that had happened, knowing that it was part of my story, but no longer in control of it. I wasn't angry, I wasn't hurt. I was just me, and that was enough. Things started feeling normal again. Not perfect, not without its challenges, but normal. And normal felt good. I focused on the things I loved, spent more time with people who mattered, and kept moving forward, slowly, but surely. Sarah and I eventually went our separate ways, but it was amicable. She was an important part of my healing, and I'll always appreciate that. But I knew I wasn't ready for anything serious. I didn't need to rush into a relationship to prove that I was okay. I was already okay. I was good. It was like a fog had lifted. I wasn't searching for closure anymore. I wasn't waiting for the world to make sense. I was just living, and it felt better than I ever expected. There was still so much ahead of me. There were still moments where I missed the life I thought I was going to have. But I realized something. The best part of this new life was that it was mine. No one else's. I was in control now, and I had the power to write the next chapter however I wanted. And for the first time in a long time, I was excited to see where it would take me.
Goodbye.